Date, Standardized Human Time, August 31st, 2136. I don't remember drifting off, but it was incredible that my instincts allowed it. There was no greater state of helplessness than during slumber, between diminished awareness and an inability to react to threats. I wonder if Marcel understood how deep of a display of trust it was that I could fall asleep in his presence at all. The human had stirred by the time I awoke, and was crouched in the corner watching me. I swished my tail at the predator, and he smiled in return. It was a sinister display, yet bearable to me because of its intention. As terrible as his physical condition was, the teeth flashing meant he was in better spirits, and that was all that mattered. That head wound must be bad, if you're willing to go near me now. The humorous lilt had returned to Marcel's voice, though it sounded strained. How are you feeling? I pawed at the bandage. Better. I think I can walk again. Oh dear, the human sighed. I didn't realize you couldn't move. So that's why you didn't run away, and I guess I heard what I needed to hear yesterday. I've been delirious. I'm sorry. No. You didn't mishear a word, and I meant what I said. We're in this together. The sound of his stomach rumbling overshadowed our conversation moments later. The gurgling persisted for several seconds, loud and insistent. Marcel's expression morphed to embarrassment, and the hint of an apology danced in his eyes. I think he figured it'd make me uncomfortable, but it only jogged my worry for his health. No animal could survive without sustenance. Have they fed you at all? I asked. The human shook his head. No. What about water? I'm thirsty myself. Marcel pointed to a rusty bucket in the corner, which was about half full with grayish liquid. The thought of lapping from that filthy container like a wild beast made me nauseous. If more time passed, though, there wouldn't be much choice. I didn't want to take the only resource the human had, for now. All right. We've got to get out of here, I said. You think, and I'll think. We'll come up with something. I glanced toward the glass pane, trying to figure out how to persuade the Federation officers. The captain was absent, which was a small point of relief. The ship doctor appeared to be in a heated discussion with a Kolshan male. Maybe our companionship had given them second thoughts about humans? I swiveled my ears toward them, straining to pick up their words. Dr. Zarn raised his eye ridges in disgust. More trauma. We should have never thrown him in there, Riesel. I know, a silky voice answered. Captain told me I could spring Slanik once the predator tries something. He just wants to scare some sense into him. Sovlin wouldn't let it eat a pup, you know. But what if it pounces on him faster than we can activate the shock collar? I can't undo a broken neck, Zarn argued. Slanik needs medical attention, regardless, and I'm not going in there. And what do I tell the captain? Make up a story. Slanik is awake now, and the human is separated from him. This could be our only chance. We can get him to move slowly toward the exit, and fry the predator if it tries anything. I glowered at the observation panel. Fuck you. I'm not going anywhere without Marcel. The human squinted in confusion. With his lousy ears, there was no way he could hear their hushed words. The two Federation officers shared a glance, before fixing me with patronizing looks. Slanik, you're not thinking straight, Riesel hissed. If what you say is true, the Venlil have fallen for a dreadful ruse. These humans just want you to give up our secrets. They'll discard you as soon as they've drained you dry. They are not your friends. That's rich, coming from the crew that tossed me in a cage, intending for me to be attacked by a predator. Riesel sighed. That was Sovlin's doing. He didn't consult us. Listen to me, Slanik. That thing is twisting your compassion against you, Zarn pleaded. The Arxer allowed us to uplift them, and only then did they attack. I'm sure your, Marcel mimics very well, but it's not real. These humans are just playing along to their benefit. You don't think any Venlil considered that? The tests we did literally analyzed human brain activity. Riesel blinked in confusion. What tests? Sovlin didn't tell you? I gasped. Our experiments recorded how humans respond to violence, and guess what? Their brains lit up with pain. You can't fake empathy on a biochemical level. The two aliens were quiet as the weight of my revelation sunk in. I recalled my own skepticism when I first learned of the humans' benevolence. There would always be a little voice in my head, suggesting that they wanted to hunt me. Our entire evolution hinged on avoiding predators, recognizing them as threats on sight. It wasn't something we could unlearn. You're either misinterpreting the results, or the humans altered them. The doctor waved a paw dismissively, and eyed Marcel with undisguised loathing. I can't listen to this, Slanek. Not from one of our own. Perhaps by the time I get back, the first officer will have snapped some sense into you. As his counterpart stormed out in a rage, Riesel inspected the human's behavior with curious eyes. The grizzled veteran seemed to be the only one listening to a word I said. My disclosure seemed to affect him, since he began pacing back and forth. It violated every facet of our moral code to treat a feeling person with such cruelty. Now was my best chance to persuade him into making Marcel's situation more livable. Marcel needs to eat, I said, trying to keep my tone calm. He will starve if he doesn't. Why should I care? The officer growled. I have no idea how long humans can live without food, but it's not forever. What use is he to you dead? Also, it's torture to me to watch him starve. If you won't do it for his sake, do it for mine. Riesel waved a grasper in frustration. Do you really expect me to carve up an animal and serve its flesh on a platter? Or are you saying you'd be the one to slaughter it for this, predator? Humans can eat plants. In fact, Marcel only consumes vegetation. Please, if you have any decency, I beg you. Give us something. Anything. There was a hint of pity in his gaze, as he scanned Marcel's visible ribs. I could tell he didn't like seeing any creature suffer, no matter what it was. Riesel fished the half-eaten remains of a purple fruit out of the waste bin, wrinkling his nose. I'm going to put this right at the door. If it so much as takes a step toward me, the second-in-command waved the collar's trigger. This is all I can manage. Sovlin will notice if I take seconds from the rations. The door slid open with a loud creak. Riesel tossed the fruit inside like it burned to the touch. I scooped it off the floor, trying to push down my revulsion at the bite marks on its side. In his current state, I think Marcel would eat it even if it was covered in literal shit. The human snatched the fruit from my paw without a second thought. He tore into it, wolfing it down in ravenous gulps. It was all he could do not to swallow it whole. He slumped back against the wall, quivering, and then proceeded to suck the juice off his grimy fingers. It wasn't anywhere close to enough to satiate the human's appetite or to provide adequate nutrition. But Riesel was the only one to offer him so much as a morsel, so I wasn't going to complain. Hopefully, it was enough to take the edge off of Marcel's hunger, to ease a bit of the desperation. Thank you so much, I told the first officer. It means the world to me. Yes, Marcel rumbled. Thank you, Riesel. I am appreciative. Riesel met the predator's eyes, shuddering from behind the safety of the glass. My guess was that the captain gave orders not to let the human speak. However, I suspected the first officer was curious to see what the prisoner would say, and just how lucid one of his kind could be. A cuddly, furless fruit-eater didn't seem at all like the bloodthirsty predators the Federation said they were. Why would you want to fight the Arxer, human? The officer asked suddenly. Is it to claim the galaxy as your own catch? To rid yourself of the competition? The Greys kill children. They eat sentients. Is that not enough reason to fight them? Marcel rubbed the chafed skin under his collar, wincing. Humans are lonely. We wanted to be your friends, but you all think we're monsters. Riesel sighed. And what do you do to your friends? We protect them. We stand by them unconditionally. Just as we are loyal to the Venlil now. How can you prove that you aren't using them as your playthings? You're telling me your instincts aren't tempted at all, having a vulnerable creature like Slanek at your mercy? God, no. Humans dote on animals much less cute than him, you know. Look at that adorable face. All I can think about is his safety. Prove it too. Captain Sovlin burst into the observation room, staring daggers at his first officer. The root of his exasperation must be walking in on his subordinate, conversing with the predator. Zarn was tailing close behind, no doubt having informed the boss about my troubling statements. The doctor had a smug look on his face. You're under its spell too, the brutish Gojid spat. Clearly, it's dangerous to let it start talking, if it can entrance you so easily. Anyone alone might succumb to its charm. The captain leaned toward Riesel, and the Kolshan flinched away from his threatening scowl. Sovlin nabbed the collar's trigger out of the officer's tentacle. He looked at me, noting how I backed toward Marcel, and shook his head. His spine stood on edge, fully extended. It made him appear much larger than his true size. Get Slanek out of here, doctor, the leader spat. I'll sign off on the psychological treatments you recommended, and we'll cure him of this delusion. No! You can't take me away, I snarled. Sovlin sidled up to the cell door, and waved for me to come to him. The idea of being placed under Federation treatments terrified me. What if they convinced me that Marcel was evil, or erased my memories of him? A pitiful whine vibrated in my throat, and I skittered away with my tail between my legs. The human moved forward to protect me, placing his bony form between me and the captain. How could he be worrying about me still, after all he'd been through? I mean it. I won't come with you. Not willingly. My voice shook with fear, but I managed to squeak out the words. Why would I ever want to come with a monster like you? Would you rather watch us dissect your human? A crazed light flashed into Sovlin's eyes. It was the look of a man who was at the end of his rope. I think it's time we open it up. See what makes it tick. Terror radiated through my blood at the captain's chilling threat. Marcel faltered in his protective stance, as he processed what was said too. The Gojid looked him right in the eyes, then jabbed a slender claw on the collar remote. The predator was down in an instant, too weakened to maintain his footing. Sovlin advanced on his prisoner, and I tried to get in the way. He merely shoved me to the floor with a disgusted grunt. Zarn took that as his cue to rush inside the cell and scoop me up in his sturdy arms. Panic filled my psyche, as though it were my own life in the balance. My self-preservation instincts kicked into overdrive, filling me with a burning urge to escape. I tried to writhe out of the doctor's grasp, to no avail. My friend's eyes narrowed as he noticed I was gone. He struggled against the pain, propping himself onto his elbows. Sovlin's face contorted with hatred, and he dealt a kick to the convulsing Marcel's head. There was a sickening crack, which I recognized as the sound of bone breaking. Blood gushed from his misshapen nose like a fountain, and the human howled in agony. It was a primal cry that made my heart burn in my chest. The captain was unrelenting in the shock's administration, electrocuting the predator non-stop. The human's complexion was turning bright red, and he struggled to breathe. His veins bulged against his pallid skin, and his teeth chattered in his jaw. He rolled onto his back, unable to muster any more fight. The Gojid lowered a hind leg, right on the spot on Marcel's ribs with the most bruising. The predator's scream seemed to satisfy the captain. It's time to end this. Sovlin drew his sidearm and flicked off the safety. I should have done this at the start, instead of wasting our oxygen prolonging its wretched life. Riesel gaped in horror, inching out from the observation room. Sir, we need to keep it alive. At least until we know more. There's nothing more I need to know. I want it off my ship, the captain roared. The first officer closed his eyes, but didn't act to intervene. The voltage ceased as the Gojid turned his attention to his weapon. Sovlin towered over Marcel, pressing the barrel to the human's temple. Those hazel eyes I had come to adore stared up helplessly, glassed over from pain. There was nothing I could do as my predator friend faced his execution. The thought of a world without my human was too much to bear. After all we'd been through, he felt like a long-lost brother rather than an alien predator. I would never hear his voice, message him in a chat room, or fly a spaceship with him again. His life was about to end in a haze of misery, because I was too weak to stop it. Why had I promised Marcel I would free him from this hell? It was cruel to give him a false sense of hope. If I had said the right words, if I had woken up sooner, maybe this wouldn't have happened. What kind of friend am I? A failure. I thought I had more time to talk the Federation down, since they refrained from killing him this far. There was no reason for the captain to rush to an irreversible decision, though he didn't seem in a particular hurry now. Sovlin was savoring the anguish on Marcel's face, and seemed to be daring him to fight back. He tapped the gun against the predator's crooked nose, which elicited a cracking sound. He swiftly returned the barrel to the human's temple, and flashed his teeth. The lack of a reaction disappointed him. Marcel was too out of it to process any more sensation. The captain sighed, and resolved himself to finish the job. I wanted to make some sort of last-ditch effort, but Zarn had me ensnared in his suffocating grip. The doctor chuckled as he realized the human was about to be terminated. It was that callous glee that spurred me to action. "No!" I screamed. "Leave him alone." I bit Zarn's arm with force, then thrashed about with my tiny claws. The weighty tack-can restrained me with ease, dragging me further out of the cell. My teeth hadn't even pierced his thick hide. The efforts wore down my strength more than anything else. The doctor clamped a paw around my mouth, suppressing any other attempts to call out. I reached out for Marcel desperately. The human made eye contact with me, and tears rolled down his mangled face. Despite the overwhelming pain, he tried to put on a brave smile. The predator was thinking about my feelings, even in his final moments. Sovlin's claw drifted toward the trigger, and I averted my eyes. I didn't want to see Marcel's brains come out the other side of his head. His beautiful snarl should be the last thing in my memory. That was how I wanted to remember him. "Lower your weapon, Sovlin, or I'll put you down with that thing." Riesel's quavering voice broke the silence, rather than a gunshot. "I can't watch this anymore. You are behaving just like the Arxer." My eyes blinked open to find the first officer, pointing his sidearm at the captain. Several emotions rushed across Sovlin's face. Most seemed to be a shade of outrage or shock. The Gojid was relishing his assault of the predator, and didn't appreciate having the finale cut off. "Riesel, there is no intelligence we need from it. Slanek can tell us everything." Zarn tightened his hold around me, imploring the first officer to stand down. "Its life has no value. It is nothing but a danger to the crew, in the case that it gets loose. It is sapient. That must have some value. No matter how little. Why have you both forgotten that?" The captain's lips curled back, revealing his curved molars. "Because they took everything from me. Everything. And now, this monster has the nerve to corrupt my crew. Let me tell you, it is done taking from us. This ends now. But it has done nothing wrong. Look at it, it's helpless," Riesel hissed. "You've beaten it half to death. So you think this human is sweet too?" Sovlin sneered. "It thirsts for blood just like the Arxer do. It is a violent creature at its core, its rotten core. Marcel savors the hunt. If it was honest, it would admit it. The only time Marcel ever showed any violent impulses was after he watched the Arxer torture Venmal children, I thought. The captain isn't wrong about human bloodlust, but they have reasons to kill. It's not anger born from a place of cruelty." The first officer swallowed nervously. "Are aggression and compassion mutually exclusive?" "We don't know. There could be more to the story. If there's a chance it wanted peace and we kill it, what does that make us? It makes us heroes. I think you're a damned fool if you give it the chance to do the exact same thing the Arxer did. Now you're going to let me protect us, and we're going to put this incident behind us. How can you be sure you're right? The Federation wouldn't have voted to destroy Earth the first time if they weren't sure, Resell. I trust in the judgment of several hundred species, as should you. Earth? Marcel groaned. I never told you. The captain's paw twitched around his gun. A shot rang out moments later, and my fur stood on end. Blood spurted through a wound in Sovlin's thigh, and the crippled leg buckled beneath him. It wasn't the Gojid who got off the first shot, to my exuberant relief. Resell tackled the spiky male away from the human. The first officer disarmed his superior, and cast a blank stare at the prisoner. The proximity to Marcel seemed to bother him, though he tried to keep his wits. I was amazed that the Kolshan veteran had intervened. The talk of human neural activity must have instilled some qualms in his mind. The first officer aimed his gun toward the doctor. If he turned to the tertiary threat, he must be satisfied that Sovlin was restrained and Marcel was incapable of lunging at him. I yelped as I felt a sudden tug around my waist. Zarn was propping me up as a shield and trying to load a syringe. Let the Venmal go, Zarn, Resell spat. You don't want to hurt him. I don't want to hurt Slanek. But I need to fix him. He's ill. Release him, now. The doctor pressed a needle to my throat, ignoring my whimper. Or what? Or I remove the human's collar and we find out. The predator was in no condition to move. It was obvious to me that he was on the brink of losing consciousness. I think Resell knew the threat was empty, but it worked like a charm on the doctor. Zarn's grip slackened, and I slithered out of his arms in a flash. My sprint to Marcel's side was a blur of elated bliss. The human yelped as I dove atop his chest, forgetting about the inflamed bruises. He pushed me off of him, with care not to hurt me. Gritting his teeth, he tried to sit up, but didn't get farther than raising his head. My stomach flipped at the sight of his nose, twisted to the side, with the skin turning a deep purple already. Did you tell them? Marcel croaked. I tilted my head. Tell them what? About Earth. They're going to. No. It's a long story, but we've got to warn your people. While my eyes were averted, Resell placed a makeshift gag around Sovlin's mouth. The captain was squirming, his voice muffled to grunts. The first officer had resorted to pacing back and forth, palming his head in frustration. I assumed he was at a loss for what to do with Marcel. Intervening to spare the human's life was simpler than releasing him. At the end of the day, Resell was a frightened Kolshan with a gun. He was the primary obstacle in our path to getting Marcel home. I contemplated an angle of persuasion, since my odds of fighting him unarmed seemed paltry. If the human dies, why did he shoot his own captain? I thought. Surely he realizes he's too far in to back out now. He wouldn't want his treason to be for naught. Resell, we've got to get Marcel out of here. He needs a doctor, I pleaded. I know. And Zarn would poison the thing as soon as treated, Resell sighed. If there's billions of these predators out there, I suppose letting this one go isn't going to make a difference. Even if, never mind. I better not give him time to change his mind. He really sounds like he's having second thoughts. I flicked my ears toward Marcel. How are we going to move him? The first officer surveyed the vicinity. His eyes landed on the wheelchair Zarn used for me yesterday. I sensed his hesitancy to retrieve it from the observation room, with Sovlin still grumbling curses and Marcel trying to sit up. The Kolshan tapped me on the shoulder and pressed the gun into my paws. If Sovlin or the Predator try anything, shoot them, Resell growled. I'll be gone a few seconds. The officer sprinted over to the wheelchair's resting spot like a predator was chasing him, which I guess he felt like it was. He rolled it back to our location, and almost fell over when Marcel glanced at him. I considered pointing the gun at Marcel, since I didn't trust him to treat the human like a person. The Kolshan was a bystander to Sovlin's torture, after all. Even now, he kept referring to Marcel as it or the predator. The sole reason I decided against backstabbing him was that I needed help. Marcel had saved Marcel's life, and wasn't actively trying to hurt him. I didn't know my way around the ship, so getting out of here was impossible without him. Not to mention that the veteran was stronger, well adapted to stress, and more adept at combat. The first officer seemed oblivious to my deliberation, as he stepped away from the wheelchair. He reclaimed his firearm, brandishing it with shaking graspers. I was by far the least threatening entity in the room, to his brain. "Move the human into the chair, Slanik," Marcel grumbled. "I can't. I'm too weak. You have to do it." "I don't want to touch it." "Grow up." "He won't bite." Marcel huffed, but slowly knelt by Marcel. He reached out with a grasper, and hissed in disgust as it touched sweat-soaked skin. His breathing devolved to sporadic gasps, as the fear chemicals became unbearable. When he lifted the predator, I worried his grip might falter. The human shouldn't be dropped, especially in his current condition. With eyes the size of moons, Marcel deposited my friend into the chair. Marcel yelped from the rough landing. My lip curled up without thinking, an instinctive warning not to hurt the predator. "Don't give me that look, Slanik." "I'm trying my best," the first officer spat. "I don't see you doing anything helpful." "I want to help. I'd do anything, really." "Gah, I'm sorry. That was harsh. I apologize." Marcel took a deep breath, and positioned himself behind the predator. "This is overwhelming for me, okay? Shit, let's just get moving." Marcel was wheeled out of the cell by the trembling Kolshan, past the watching Zarn. I made eye contact with the doctor during my own exit. A Federation officer, carting a wounded predator away, with a mesmerized Venlil in tow, suffice to say, it wasn't his desired outcome. The TAC can seemed to be having an aneurysm at the sight of our posse. "You're making a big mistake. Humans are sociopaths. Murderers." Zarn screeched. Marcel pointed at the doctor. "You get in that cell and treat Sovlin. I'd prefer if he doesn't bleed out." The medic bared his teeth at us. He slunk inside with reluctance, and began tending to the captain's injury with his kit. Marcel pressed a button outside the cell, and the door slid shut. Several clicks indicated that it locked behind us. Clearly, the first officer didn't want his devious shipmates pursuing us, or tipping us off to the crew. Realization flashed in the doctor's eyes, and he slammed a paw on the wall in frustration. "Why didn't I do that to you all?" Zarn wailed. Marcel snorted, waving a shiny object. "Because I have the key." The hint of a smirk played at Marcel's face, which showed he was still conscious. I was pleased to see him responsive, though I hoped he didn't start laughing. The last thing we needed was the first officer thinking the human was growling. It was going to be difficult to get a battered predator out unnoticed as things were. "Marcel, aren't the crew going to wonder why the predator got loose?" I asked. "Won't they freak out?" The first officer thought for a moment. He yanked the fire alarm, then pressed a button on his holopad to trigger an evacuation order. An automated message relayed the command to abandon ship, while the overhead sprinklers doused us in cold water. "This guy is smart, I'll give him that," I thought. "Maybe he will be useful." Nobody would question an officer moving a high-value prisoner under emergency procedures. In his current state, Marcel appeared sedated, so that might limit panic too. Giddiness abounded in my mind at the thought of freedom. Returning home with my best friend might have been a trip to paradise, as far as I was concerned. It felt like we had been given a new lease on life. With uncertain steps, Marcel guided us into the shuttle bay. Several ear-piercing screams were our greeting, once the crewmates detected the half-conscious predator. The way they pointed at Marcel made me seethe. The people nearest to the entrance tripped over themselves in their haste to get away. The first officer ignored them, pushing Marcel toward an unoccupied shuttle. He carried the human with less overt fright this time. His delicacy as he placed the predator in the back seat surprised me. The fact that he noticed his prior mistake, through the haze of terror, showed a great deal of empathy. Riesel clicked the harness over Marcel's withered chest, which was forcing out shallow breaths. The Kolshan felt the human's pulse. The concern in his eyes reignited my own worries. The heartbeat must have been rapid or erratic. The first officer found a blanket under the seat and draped it over the predator's barren form. It was undeniably a kind gesture. Riesel seemed to care. Whether he would admit it was another question. As reluctant as I was to forgive the officer for his role in Marcel's abduction, I was worried about what would happen to him next. We couldn't leave the man who saved us behind to hang for treason. Come with us. I jumped into the pilot's seat, firing up the launch sequence. You can't stay here, Riesel. They'll have you hanged. I'd rather face whatever the Federation has in store for me than live surrounded by humans. The first officer took a last look at Marcel, blinking rapidly. But I wish you both well. For the sake of us all, I pray you're right about this. Please, you don't have to see the humans. I'm sure the Venmal will take care of you, and we can put you somewhere far away from them. For Marcel's sake, we have to dock at the outpost, assuming it's still there, I thought. I'm not sure how the humans would react to Riesel's presence, but we can cross that bridge when we get to it. But that's not the point. I deserve to hang, Slanek. The officer's composure crumbled, and he buried his face in his tentacles. I don't know what came over me back there. I'm a traitor. You stopped a murder. And now, this is our only chance to stop a genocide. If Earth is attacked, there will be no chance of peace. Not now, maybe not ever. The fate of the Federation hinges on what we do. Are you really going to sit that out? Riesel stepped off the craft, a torn look on his face. He stood motionless and pondered my words. No wise veteran wanted another predatory enemy. That would ensure that the Federation lost the war. With a reluctant sigh, the first officer clambered back onto the ship. He squeezed into the back seat beside Marcel, leaning away from him. Regret was already etched on the Kolshan's gelatinous features. I suspected this would be a long ride for our Federation savior. Date, Standardized Human Time, September 1, 2136. My visit to the research outpost was intended to last half a day. At my request, Cheln, my diplomatic advisor, had crafted a speech to show our solidarity with the UN. The whole afternoon was a joint ceremony in remembrance of the humans who sacrificed their lives in our defense. At the end of it, I would send off the predators who partook in our first civilian encounter. The volunteers of Doctors Without Borders and the Red Cross would board the initial outbound ship, with their Venmal partners in tow. It was time for humans to receive a proper integration into our society, and that meant moving planetside. That was a less concerning prospect than it would have been before our experiments. There were 0 reports of human on-Venmal violence during the past 10 days. Most of the complaints against the Terrans involved the predators trying to stroke our curly fur, which I found bewildering. That wasn't behavior I saw them exhibit with each other, so it couldn't be written off as a social custom. Perhaps a display of possessiveness? But overall, the trial of our species living together was a pleasant success, more so than any scientists predicted. The predators had an uncanny ability to bond with anything, and that allowed them to forge close connections within days. My mind defaulted to thinking of Noah and Sarah as part of my in-group at this point. I never could have imagined, when this all started, that I would look forward to seeing them as I did now. So they're alive. Do you think they'll have good news? Sarah asked. The ceremony had come to an abrupt halt when General Cam informed the UN delegation of a pressing development. A Federation shuttle barged into Venmal territory and raised a series of alarms. Its pilot claimed to be the missing patrolman Slanek. He kept repeating that his human companion needed medical attention, in a hysterical voice. I would have kept it on the down low until we knew more, but Secretary General Meyer wanted everyone aware of the situation. He believed that if the change of plans wasn't explained, rumors would spread that the Arxer were attacking. The UN leader's presence was unexpected. We had never met in person or spoken beyond video messages. But it seemed when Ambassador Noah told him of my plans, he wished to attend the memorial firsthand. Many humans flocked to the docking port as the news dispersed. Everyone on the station was eager to welcome the arrivals. The crowd numbered several hundred, once Venlo were added to the count. Terran paramedics were on standby, and the media were swarming to report any developments. I knew why the Predators wanted to see the state of the captives. They were trying to decide if the Federation was an enemy. In the wake of my shocking admission, they wanted to know if coexistence was even possible. This was a good sign, if the Federation military were civilized enough to hear a Predator out and set it free. I'm hopeful, guys. I swished my tail reassuringly. If the Federation let your Marcel fellow go, maybe I was wrong. Maybe they can see you for the sensitive and wonderful species you really are. I greenlit the plan for a preemptive strike days ago. Meyer's voice was slow and gravelly, flowing with a practiced cadence. The general suggested that we needed to hit the key Gojid launch points. I have no way of recalling our bombers, even if I want to. Damn it all. Noah cursed. I knew we were too hasty. The Federation will see this as an unprovoked attack. We're going to ruin all chances of peace. I patted the ambassador on the shoulder, hoping to quell his emotions. His brown eyes softened, and he gave me an appreciative nod. There was no sense in lamenting what was already set in stone. All we could do now was address the consequences together. Proximity alarms shrieked, as our sensors detected an unknown vessel within bombing range. The UN generals switched them off, then granted permission for the inbound ship to dock. A few Terran soldiers lingered near their officers with assault rifles, in case of a trap. Their paranoia and suspicion had soared to new heights since they learned the galaxy wanted to kill them. I didn't have the heart to tell them that such deception was a Predator's tactic. Playing at empathy would never be the Federation's modus operandi. The exterior airlock creaked open, and a Federation shuttle descended from the inky backdrop. It followed the station's landing beacon to glide through the opening, and mounted its footings into the docking port with surgical precision. The craft wasn't big enough to fit more than 4 individuals, and that was if they stacked on top of each other. The soldiers relaxed, satisfied that an ambush force was ruled out. It only took a few seconds for the port to repressurize, but I could sense the humans' restlessness. Anxious murmurs cycled through the crowd. Waiting, on the cusp of certainty, fueled the darker side of their imagination. The partition between the reception area and the dock receded once the sensors determined it was safe. A silver-gray Venlo poked his head from the spacecraft, which drew a few cheers from our people. A bandage wound its way around his ears, tying down the lone black tuft of hair on his forehead. The wrappings were soaked through with rich, orange fluid. That fresh bleeding suggested he needed medical attention himself. The human paramedics exchanged looks, as there was no sign of their man. They shouldered their way past the Venlo. I could only see their backs, but they seemed to stiffen as they laid eyes on the interior. What had they seen that we had not? How severe were the humans' injuries? The Predators toted a stretcher inside, and summoned a gurney to wait by the ship. Loud calls thundered above the chatter to clear a path. That meant Marcel was alive, but I had to wonder why he couldn't walk out under his own power. It also raised the question of how he incurred such a condition in the first place. Sarah pressed a hand to her mouth. My God! What have they done? I am more grateful to you than ever, Tarva, Noah breathed, shaken to the core. I should have never questioned your decision. I see now what you saved us from. Similar cries erupted from the onlookers as the paramedics emerged with the captured human. Marcel's malnourishment was apparent at first glance. His skin hugged his bones tightly, and his stomach was a flat depression beneath his ribcage. I wasn't sure if it was the starvation or the vicious injuries that caused his breathing to sound so strained. The poor guy's face was mashed to a pulp, bruised and bloodied. Whoever beat the human seemed to take particular offense to his binocular eyes. The way the sockets were turning black made my stomach flip. A metal band was fitted to his neck, and the skin beneath was marred with minor burns. Why was that choker still on him? Nobody had taken it off. The Venlo almost seemed more incensed than the humans. The thought of the Federation doing that to their buddy sparked a predatory rage. My own blood boiled at such a grave injustice. Noah was right, that would have been him if I allowed it. I was wavering on whether I wanted the humans to show mercy to my old friends after all. Stop filming this, I hissed at our media personnel. Show some respect. Meyer crossed his arms. No, film it. On the condition that you'll show it everywhere. I want everyone to see this. To document how the Federation treated one of ours. When we declare war on these bastards, I don't want anyone saying it's for no reason. Whoa, hold up. If they realize their mistake and let him go, Noah whispered. Maybe they're sorry, and YSH to make amends? They didn't realize anything. Slanik's horizontal pupils snapped toward us as he overheard the ambassador's comment. The captain was going to kill Marcel, and they're still planning to bomb Earth. What stopped them from killing him? Did you talk them down? I asked, in a soft voice. I tried, Governor. But they wouldn't listen. We escaped by the skin of our teeth because of First Officer Riesel. He incapacitated the captain and escorted us off the ship. The Secretary General frowned. What happened to this Riesel? I brought him with us, sir. He's on the ship, I can't get him to come out. This isn't, exactly what I promised him. My ears swiveled toward the shuttle. I thought I could detect the sound of terrified whines amidst the commotion. Meyer looked like he wanted to retrieve the first officer himself, and was about to start in that direction. Though the gray-haired human didn't exude hostility, I feared he might escalate Riesel's emotions to a blinding panic. Let me handle this, I said to the humans. Noah, Sarah, you remember how hard it was for us, and there were only 2 of you. Meyer glanced at the astronauts and fell back as their nods affirmed my words. I ducked into the spacecraft to look around. Huddled beneath the pilot's chair was a Kolshan male with a dark blanket over his head. It was a pitiful attempt at camouflage, it would be amusing, at a brighter time. The movement of the fabric and the outline of his form were obvious giveaways. I imagine the human paramedics noticed Riesel, but were too preoccupied with Marcel to coax him out. Within closer range, the whine sounded more like muffled screams. I clicked my claws on the floor, so Riesel would know the approaching person wasn't a human. The officer peeked out from under his tarp. His bulbous, orange eyes lit up with recognition. Governor Tarva. Riesel exclaimed. You're alive? Of course I'm alive. What made you think I wasn't? It's just, nobody has actually seen you in months. And this station is infested with predators, I saw them through the window. Lurking, waiting. It's not infested, and they have good reason to lurk. They were curious and worried, and now, they're rather upset. Hell, I'm upset too. Oh, please help me, Tarva. This is a nightmare, and I've done it to myself. I just want to wake up, you know? Get me out of here. Please. Calm down. Everything is all right now. Tell me, what is it that the humans are doing that's bothering you? Slanik said there were just a couple, damn it. 2 or 3, I could tolerate, but looking at all those predators. Pure agony. It feels like my chest is on fire. I don't know how you bear it. I know exactly how you feel. It will pass. You can't know that. But I do. How about I introduce you to my first human friend? Just one of them. Just one. Just one. Resell whined, rocking back and forth. Okay. Just one. The Kolshan was clearly on the brink of a nervous breakdown, but I decided to move forward with that tepid affirmation. This guy defied a superior officer and sacrificed his career to save a human. That wasn't a risk that someone took without good reason. There had to be some part of Resell that already accepted the predator's true nature. It was a matter of getting through to him, of bringing his logical mind back into the equation. Whether it was reason or empathy that struck home, it didn't make a difference. Noah. Come here, I called. The male astronaut hurried in, rushing to my side. Is everything all right? What's going on, Tarva? HM. The first time I saw Noah, I thought he was feral. Can you imagine answering that hail? I waved a paw in the human's direction, and Resell shuddered. All of his teeth were showing, and those murderous eyes were like something out of a nightmare. He looked like the meanest, nastiest creature in the universe. The ambassador sighed. Ah, Governor, you always flatter me. Shush. I'm getting to the important part, I huffed. But anyhow, the human's words were about peace. There was such a disparity between that appearance and the things they said. My brain couldn't reconcile it. I'm just saying, Tarva, you could fake the occasional compliment. Noah shot me a coy smile. I had been around the predators too long if I could differentiate snarls, hadn't I? Talk about my winning personality? My exquisite physique? Pretend you liked me? I do like you. Stop fishing. At any rate, there was this collection of little things the humans did that made me think maybe. The odd doubt. But looking at them dredged up all my worst memories, so I shut out that voice. I wanted them gone. Then why did you stop Sovlin from getting rid of them? What happened? Resell stammered. I teared up just a little, and the first thing Noah did was try to comfort me. I realized that I never gave him a chance. No unfeeling creature would pick up on emotional nuances like they do. That's when I knew. When did it click for you? The instant Slanik showed signs of distress, Marcel tried to protect him. It was something he said, that he only cared for the Venlal's safety. The Kolshan's eyes became distant, as though he was reliving the moment. Even when the captain had a gun against his head, the predator was trying to soothe his friend. And I believed him, if just for a moment. You sensed it then, Resell. You know that nobody could fake it that perfectly. I know. But, I feel. Forget about the feel. You're going to walk out of here with me and Noah. We'll find you a room, and I want you to rest up. And then? Then, we're going to determine who is responsible for what happened to Marcel. The humans will decide what to do about it. It's your decision, but I'd like you to speak to them. You represent the Federation, as far as we're concerned. Noah nodded. As would I. We don't have to be enemies. Resell rose on unstable legs and dusted himself off. Those first steps into the open were tentative and frightful. He coiled his tail around mine for support. Venturing out through the sea of humans, many of whom were openly staring, must have been a daunting task. But he managed to hold back the scream which I sensed building in his chest. The officer lowered his gaze to the floor, and marched ahead through the chemical fever. Perhaps this man was a spark of hope that not everyone would write humanity off on sight. I prayed that Earth could find other friends in the galaxy, and that our newfound ally would find the courage to prove that it was a possibility.